Hello, I'm your host, Giselle Gamby, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast, where together we'll embrace the plans we did not make yet, unfold businesses and lives that are so much greater in wealth in all ways than any business or life plan could ever achieve. My wish is that you make intuition your most trusted advisor. So, buckle up, get present, and let's go. Welcome back, dear listeners, and welcome to our new listeners. I've got a really special episode today. We are hanging out with one of my very best friends, Michelle Richmond. I've known Michelle, I reckon, for it must be close to about 30 years or 25 years.
I think about 25.
Yeah, it's a long time. So Michelle and I, we live in different parts of the world. Michelle lives in Kenya, and we have walked alongside each other in those 25 years, over those 25 years. Whether we haven't seen each other for a long time, we always come back together again and find that we're actually traveling the same path. And so it's hugely joyous for me today to have Michelle here on this podcast. And it's a special episode because we have a particular purpose on this podcast, and that is to really ignite your inspiration, to blow open your heart, to feel a calling, to really receive that you are here to catalyze deep impact and to be called into big magic. And there's a special container that Michelle and I want to speak to today, and that is the container of a retreat that we're holding together in Kenya on the 1st of November for 12 nights and days. And we will be speaking to that calling by sharing what's in our hearts. And so all that I'll ask the listeners, some of you will be absolutely called to come, you'll know. And there will be other people who Kenya is not for them, and that is totally fine. But there will be something in this episode that will create something exponential in your life. It's the only thing that can happen when Michelle and I come together, because it happens for us when we're in the presence of each other.
It so does. Magic always happens. Inspiration always happens. And I think, as you said, Gizzy, it's not actually about whether you come to Kenya or not. Of course, that is an extraordinary experience you can't find anywhere else in the world, especially with us together. We are a powerful force. I'm not afraid to say that. Together, we're extraordinary individually, where we are brilliant coaches. We're very good at what we do. And when you bring that force together, it's like any coherence. It creates big magic. So it's a privilege to share this journey across Kenya with the magic of Kenya, which is it's a land that makes my eyes water. And as many people who come here say, it's like, for some, when they come, it ignites something in your heart, even in your cells and your home. There's something special about the presence of this land. I came for a holiday, and 8 years later, I am still here. I've built a home here, settled here, and it's an extraordinary place to live. And for me, it is a humbling place to live, because everywhere you go, there is the reality of life. So there is something about this journey, which we've traveled twice before on safari, that happens here that cannot be explained in words or with the mind. And I think that's probably one of the challenges we face. It's really hard to explain to people what happens on safari. Yes, it's a physical adventure, but there is something else happens. As Gavin, we just saw on his Facebook post, wrote 5 years ago, this was the one trip. What was his words? Do
Let
you
me
have them
just
in
pull it
front of
up.
you?
It's so interesting because we had scheduled this episode or this interview today, Friday, the
Yeah.
29th of July. And of course, synchronicity happens, and Facebook pulls up a memory that our darling friend Gavin reshares. And he says, cannot believe it has been 5 years. The one trip that changed, in inverted commas and capital letters, everything for me. And then below that was Alana, who was also on that trip. And she said, Kenya did that for me too. Isn't that crazy
Exactly.
that memory popped up today as we are recording this episode?
It is, isn't it? In the moment, like I literally logged on and that popped up, and I thought, isn't that's the thing, right? It's the one trip that changed everything for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And it's it's something, as you said, that the container creates, but it's also the group of people that come together. They form lifetime friendships, I find. There's it goes beyond just what happens on safari. The relationships that are formed from this experience are deep and they're impactful. They're usually long standing, and some of them ignite their own magic, their own business relationships, or supporting each other in business or in growing and expanding. And that's a beautiful exponential effect as well, a ripple effect.
Mm. Yes, I remember when we were in the Masai Mara and we were sitting up in the trees. There was a platform up in the
Yes.
trees, and we were supposed to complete, by a certain time. My mum had come and she was traveling with us. Obviously, she wasn't in the workshop part. And I said to mum, oh, we'll be down, at 4 o'clock or whatever time it was. And we were like 2 hours late. I know that moment was the moment that Alana is referring to, and again, it's impossible to put into words. It was a multidimensional experience, one that absolutely created healing at a quantum level. And if that doesn't make sense to people, those words, multidimensional and healing at a quantum level, what it means is healing that did not need to take time and space, and
Spontaneous.
spontaneous, and a remembering that did not need to take time and space. And that happened between Alana and Andreas. If Andreas is listening to this now, they were soul contracted. Like, there were two people sitting there side by side, but their souls were like plucked out of the air, put onto that platform up in the trees in Kenya, and they had a conversation that literally changed everything. Actually, for both of them, I feel, not
Yes.
just for Alana. And speaking, of my experience of Kenya, because of course you live there, but I had never been there, and I'd never been to. Well, I had been to South Africa, but only just for a little while. I thought that I would come once to facilitate a retreat with you, and then I came twice, and then I wanted to come again, and then COVID happened, and it didn't make sense to come again because we, needed to go somewhere else. That's what you do.
Exactly. There's so many amazing places in the world.
But Kenya keeps calling me, and I said to you when COVID was happening and we're all locked down, I said when we open up, I said Kenya's going to be the place that I go to, that I come back to, because my heart is there.
There's something about the land. It's in some people it ignites a connection that is, like you said, your heart is there. I've been privileged. I haven't been on safari a little bit through COVID, of course. But prior to COVID, I've been on safari like 12 times, which is more than many people who have lived here all their life. And every time I drive into the Masai Mara, I see that vast land. I know the exact point, and I burst into tears. For no reason. There's the tears that Dr. Demartini says are created with no understanding. There's just something magical, energetic about the land that ignites new seeing, opens your heart.
I mean, I've got the tears going on right now as you're speaking
I
to
can see.
that. And I think, I think part of it, not only is it the magic of the land, but I think, for us, living, well, I know that, for people living in places like Australia, I'm not saying there are only Australians listening to this podcast because that's not true, but Kenya is just such a different place. And only one, there's so many, but one of the benefits of going to a place like Kenya is because it is so different that on retreat, it's like you are literally in a different landscape. So therefore your mind becomes a different landscape. It becomes so wide open, and all the rules and the belief systems and the ways that we do things back at home that we're attached to no longer hold their attachment.
Yeah. And they no longer apply. And because everything here is so different. And I'm thinking of when you say that is when we took Alexandra, the beautiful Alexandra Spirados, with us to potentially do painting and art and yoga. And we put the canvas out and we're ready to paint. And it was a 6-meter long canvas, and throw the paint on the canvas and let go of everything. I think it was day 2 or 3 of the safari. We climbed the Loganot the day before, which was quite physically taxing, especially after long haul flights across the world, because people came from everywhere. And in that moment of painting, when our beautiful friend Fiona picked me up and put me on the canvas, and everyone started throwing paint, and like we couldn't have designed that. It just happened, and it became a huge paint fight. But in that moment, everybody let go of everything. It was no longer, the architect from Vietnam and the marketing guru from, Western Australia winery. Everyone was like 6 years old. And in that moment, everybody let go of their identity, who they thought they should be or how they should be. And it was that was the magic, right? And it was only day 2. And after that, everyone was so open. But in that moment, they also let go of something. Like you said, that who I am, who I need to be, how I should show up. It was all over in a nanosecond. And that's what I love about the safari is, as much as we set an intention before we leave, and this year is Deep Impact called into Big Magic, which at this juncture, actually, before I even continue with this story, I just wanted to share there's something that's really important to me. It's the thing that creates tears that have no understanding. As much as this is an exceptional experience you will never have anywhere else, the world requires those of us that are intelligent, who have a calling, who know either it's in front of them, they're creating something that's creating an impact in the world, or betters the world in some way, or betters people's lives in some way, or contributes to supporting nature, and whether that's planting trees, being an extraordinary parent, or creating a multi-million-dollar business that creates an impact. There is no time like this moment that the world needs us to stop being latent and to step up and to create big magic. And I think, yes, I love sharing this experience with you. I love inviting people to come. I love the moment where I see the awe and wonder, break open in people's hearts and faces. I think for me this year particularly, what's extraordinarily important to me, that anyone who knows they have something to contribute, that they either want to seed, birth, and bring to life, or that they're already doing and wanting to accelerate. Or I was talking to a client the other day who's at a change point in his career unexpectedly and setting up a new business, and we're drilling into what is that next 5 years about for you, what's really important. And the importance is that he create from his business 20 million to be able to give to a charity that makes an impact. And he said, I don't know how to get there. But that's my focus. So the business was just really the vehicle to create the dream of making an impact through chosen charities. To me, that's what's really important, Jizzy, for us this year. And I know it is for you too, is to accelerate your impact of the people that you help. And for me, and I think this year that's really important, and that's who I would like to invite on this safari, because as I said to him, he is a genius, literally, and a very successful man with brilliant strategy, brilliant business acumen. And I said to him, but the power of the heart, according to the Institute of Heart Math, is 5,000 times more magnetic than the brain, and receives information 7 seconds before the brain. Imagine if we take your genius, and he's been personality tested as only one in 33 million people in the world, and we activate that by 5,000. That's how you get there in 5 years or less. And you and I both know that the people who've traveled with us on safari, or whether it's in our individual retreats, that whatever they put out for before they come with us on a journey is accelerated at a rapid pace. It happens quicker and faster than they can imagine. So it's not just about what happens on retreat, it's about what happens when they go home from retreat. And that's right down to the core of their relationships with their partner, their relationships with their children, and the relationship with their teams, the way they choose to lead differently, the relationship with their patients and the way they practice medicine. Whatever it is, we know, because we've experienced it, we've witnessed it so many times in the last 25 years, of the exponential impact, deep impact, and the magic that's created when people travel with us on either our individual retreats or our safaris. And that, to me, that's what's important about this year. More important than ever before.
More important than ever before. I totally agree with you. I went to see Marianne Williamson Friday week ago, and I mean, we are in a mess. We're in a mess. The world's in a mess. And so absolutely, she was so direct and in such a, excuse my swearing, but in such a no bullshit way.
Yeah.
She was so direct in, like, people are indulging their egos. She was just like, stop it. Just stop it, and step up. And I'm really glad that you spoke to, the big vision of the reason why we're coming together on retreat. And I actually want to acknowledge who I've been calling the wholehearted man, Cameron, because he was actually the catalyst for me to reach out to you to say, hey, Michelle, do you want to do a retreat this year?
And you knew the answer before you called.
Of course, because originally the inception was that it would be only men.
Yes.
And because what I'd been experiencing working with men in the last little while is that when, there's a perception that if a man is loving and loving of self and loving of others and, has a softness and has a vulnerability, that they lose power. But in fact, the truth is that they become even more powerful. And that's what I've been experiencing with the men that I've been working with. And I thought, wow, imagine bringing men to Kenya. And do you remember this conversation was like, can you imagine? Oh my God, can you imagine what they're already powerful? They're already powerful. What would be created when their hearts are open even more, maybe for the first time or maybe even wider? And so we said yes to that. And then later on, we were like, no. We also want to welcome women, because on the flip side, the experience around women is that they believe that if they are powerful and they choose to take their place and really claim their leadership, then that comes at a risk to the loss of love, that their partners, that their partners won't accept it. But the truth is that the same thing as a man, when a man chooses to love himself and love others and soften and become vulnerable and really come from the heart, they become more powerful. The more a woman claims her place and really owns her leadership, the more loving she is. So everybody wins. So that's why we decided that this wouldn't just be for men, but also for women. But thank you, Cameron, for having catalyzed
Cameron
that
did
thought.
Ignite the conversation. So
he's been ready to book flights from the moment that I
And I think that is the thing. Those people that have been called, because we haven't shared this a lot in the world, are saying yes straight away. There is no denial. There is no second guessing. I think the one conversation that comes up maybe is, oh, I don't have time. I've got, if I can fit it in my schedule. But in actual fact, if you think you don't have time, well, then you're absolutely meant to be here, because what this acceleration and momentum that's created is, it creates time, because it also teaches you to create in a very different way that is effortless. And as your favorite saying, where grace does the heavy lifting. And so if you're listening to this and think, oh, I'd love to come, but I don't have time, I'm telling you, you need to be here.
Exactly. It's like that saying, I'm too busy to meditate, I don't have time.
Yes.
So if you say you're too busy to meditate, I don't have time, now's the time
then
to
you
meditate.
absolutely meditate. Exactly. Because I think that's where the big magic comes in, as you and I know, because we've practiced it, we've seen with our clients, we live the work. When there's that coherence, which is created through an old one we did for our retreat a couple of years ago, the Soul Trilogy, when who you are, what you'd love to create, and what wants to be created through you are in resonance, as in physics, a spark ignites and creative acceleration occurs. That is the magic that happens here, because it's not only about what you own about yourself, it's also about what you're willing to let go of, what you're willing to lose, as you experienced recently.
Yes.
By being vulnerable and seeing something that you were like, wow, I've been hiding this, either through I didn't want to share anyone, maybe a feeling of guilt or shame. Then you surrender that, all the energy that it takes to suppress or hold yourself together in a certain way, to have a certain persona, to be either judgmental of yourself or others, or pushing love away. All those things take energy. So when you give yourself permission to lose shiitake that no longer serves you, then it frees you up to harness that energy and focus it into what it is you'd love to create on every level of your life.
Yes. And there's two things I want to say to that. The first thing is that one of the benefits of coming on retreat is that we have the luxury of time. We have the luxury of the spaces in between the workshop. where we are on safari, or we're having, dinner together, or we're walking up a volcano, and my experience on retreat recently as a participant was that it happened in the spaces in between for me. It happened over dinner. There was a conversation that catalyzed a thought process in myself where I thought to myself, wow, this is a place where I don't have any integrity in. And then I did some work, and I opened up, and I thought I was done. I thought I was done, on day 2 until the final morning, when my body decided that I wasn't done, and I actually had no control over what was happening in my body, and my body needed to acknowledge things that had not been acknowledged. And I feel so spacious and free as a result. And so, yeah, a couple of things about that. The body is so intelligent. The body is so intelligent. The body loves us. The body loves us and wants us to be well, and wants us to be in the full expression of ourselves. I mean, that's why we have this body, so that we can be in the expression of ourselves. Otherwise, we might as well just stay as a soul, in a formless state. The benefit of retreat, one of the benefits of that, is that it gives the body time to listen to its own intelligence and to do what it needs to do in favor of us to be free to be in the fullest expression of ourselves. And the other thing that I want to say is that my experience since retreat is, of course, I've had conversations since then that I've never had conversations with. And it's been with men who have not acknowledged similar things to what I had acknowledged. Yes. And I've never had those conversations up until now. And it's not even like as if I led the conversation. The conversation they just arrived. So it's just absolutely incredible, the synchronicities that occur when we, when we take an action that's quite big. Like, it's quite big to go on retreat, to go away from our lives, to go away from our families, to go away from our work for 12 days or whatever it is. It was only 4 days for me at that, the last time. It's quite a big act. And that act is an act of surrender to that calling. It's an act of faith and trust. It's a decision that says, I'm willing to completely play along together in partnership with this higher intelligence, and to go for the ride. And what happens is always more than what we could ever have expected. Always more. And joy.
Yes.
Not suffering.
It's so much fun. Yes, we gave up the suffering part a long time ago.
Yes, exactly.
And I remember when we first started doing this work, and one of the first workshops I went to, it was all about, the crying your way through your shiitake. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be crying the way through the rest of my life if I keep this up.
Yeah.
And it's actually what did me a big favor. It's what motivated me to go, there has to be an easier way to create change, right? I can't sit here crying about everything that ever happened to me, which wasn't actually that bad. So, so that was the gift, excuse me, in that experience was like, wow, this is powerful, right? It was powerful work, and it helped my body to heal at the time because I was in a health crisis. But when I got through it, I was like, okay, well, there has to be a simpler way. What is that simpler way? And I never intended to be a coach as a career or study mind body medicine, but I was curious. I was curious about how, as Bruce Lipton says, if we change our perception, our environment, and our belief, does the body heal itself? That innate intelligence that you're talking about.
Mm.
And I was curious about the fastest way to get there. Because like, who has time to be sitting around crying? And I love that about the work that we do. Yes, there may be tears, but the tears are more an expression of just surrendering and releasing something so that you can move into creation. And I think that's also the beauty of our work. We have lived the work, And that's the benefit of the depth of our experience. It's not textbook. It's because we've applied the rules of living in intentionality, the raising above, living in suffering, to living in grace, to all the things that contribute to creating big magic. And like you said, living in authenticity to that. And still, we have been doing this for 20 years, and we still both have a coach because we choose to continually expand and fly higher and discover what else is there. And that is also the magic. It's a whole change in the way, in who we are in the world and to the world, where creation is not about doing, creation is about being. Creation is about being the biggest, most brilliant expression of yourself. And through that beingness, then what you're here to do shows up, it arrives. What you're here to create shows up. You know? And I think the most freeing thing I ever read was Eckhart Tolle saying, the purpose of all life is to be. And from that state of beingness, everything else flourishes. I thought, oh my God, isn't that just so freeing? All these workshops on what's your purpose? What's your purpose?
Yes.
It's actually in that beingness, everything. That's where the magic happens.
It is. And again, that's the benefit of giving yourself, as we do for ourselves, time, space to be, because then we allow what wants to be led through us to arrive. It's not like as if, we're brainstorming. This is not a brainstorming session.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's be clear, guys. There is no strategy to
There's no flip chart.
Yeah. We don't have a plan. There's no plan. We have an intention.
And intuition is our strategy. Is our strategy. So yes, there's no brainstorming session as to, what do I wish to create? Yes, there are some things that come from us, absolutely, but more so when we're talking about deep impact and being called into big magic. That's the word. We're called into big magic. It comes through us, right? It comes through us, and the benefit of giving yourself time and space away from your usual doings is that it allows that to come through. It allows the calling to come through, to emerge. And then the benefit of being together is, of course, there's all this bounce off between participants. So somebody says one thing and another person, it totally hits into them and enlivens
something. It's an aha moment. Yeah. It doesn't actually just come from us. It comes from the whole group is a container of extraordinary people. And everyone in essence is a facilitator in the process, because as you said, it's the magic is in someone saying something that ignites a memory or an aha moment or an, oh God, that's me. Or most importantly, oh God, it's not just me. Sometimes we think, oh God, I'm this or I'm that, or I'm not this or not that. And then we see reflections from other people as like, oh, it's not just me who experienced that or thinks that way or wants that or would love more of that, It's not selfish to want something.
No, not at all. We're very good at giving to ourselves. And
yes,
speaking of, this is a very luscious experience. There is something that's been sitting inside of me. It's been sitting inside of me probably for the last 10 minutes or so, and it's a little dangerous, but
we love a little danger.
If it's there, it's there, and I'm going to speak to it. I remember actually a few years ago when I started to receive intuition that really felt audacious. Like it really felt, I thought, who am I to say this? Really, I don't have any place to. And the only way that I gave myself permission to was to actually say to the person, look, this feels really audacious for me to say this. And then when I'd say it, they would cry because I'd hit
Create
into
a deep
something,
impact, right?
right? Deep impact that spoke to them. It spoke to them. And of course, only amazing things happen. So I'm trusting the dangerous, what feels dangerous for me right now is actually really loving. And so this is the piece. I know that there are people, and I know who some of those people are, who are really powerful and really successful. And they're doing life really, really well. Really well. And I feel emotional now, actually, as I'm about to say this. And there's more. And there's more. And I'm not talking about all the trappings because they've got all the trappings. They've done that really well. I'm talking about their heart. They've got such big hearts. And I'm speaking to some particular men that I've known for a long time. They've got such big hearts. And I don't know if it's a little bit of laziness or a little bit of comfort, or a little bit of just focusing on self and family, which is nothing wrong with that. My God, that's leadership in itself. But I know that their hearts are just enormous, and that they already have the power. They're already at that level. They already have the capacity to create deep impact beyond what they have already created. And they might not know what that is. I don't even know what that is right now. But I just know that they're here to go beyond, their impact is here to go beyond the impact that they've already had.
Created.
Yeah. So, if you're listening, I'm speaking to you.
Exactly. Hear the calling.
Hear the calling.
I sense the Jizzy, as you say that, I know there's men, we're talking about men, that, as you say, they're extremely successful, brilliant men I admire, who are doing great things. Yet there is an ache that feels too vulnerable to answer, or too vulnerable to explore or give birth to. And I've heard it said, one of my clients say about a friend who was basically having a breakdown. And he said, oh, if I stop, if I take time off, people will think I'm weak. And it's not weak to answer that calling or that ache or whatever it is for you. It's 1,000,000% courageous. Because I will say, it does take courage to come on safari with us, because we do go deep in the nicest, most joyous possible way. It requires vulnerability, but vulnerability, as Brené Brown says, vulnerability is so powerful. Because just imagine it, if you take that extraordinary intelligence you have, that incredible acumen that you have, and you gift yourself the time and space to be really true to yourself. Because I want to say something here that's present is, there is nothing more important in the world than your health and your happiness.
You can speak from experience. Like that's
Yeah.
authentic to you, that piece.
Yeah, so authentic. You can have everything, all the trimmings and all the trappings, and you and I live richly. But if you don't give yourself permission to go to that vulnerability, to be courageous, and either answer that calling or lose that pain that you're feeling so you can give birth to the immaculate creation that's aching inside of you, it creates disease. And you know that I've experienced that myself, and I've witnessed that in so many people I work with, and you've moved into that arena as well. And I'm living that now, you know. I'm with someone who's truly amazing, extraordinary, has so much to give the world. And there's a pain so deep inside of him that he's so intelligent. Whatever it is cannot be released, and it's causing great suffering.
Mm.
And that's the power of vulnerability.
Mm.
Is actually as I said, and as you experienced recently, the surrender of that pain and fear.
Mm.
Whatever it is, like we don't even see it. You know, I know when I went through the experience, the same as you, I had completely suppressed certain memories. And when they first came to my mind, actually, I remembered them, and I went, I can't deal with that now. And I shut it down, and I completely forgot it again. And it wasn't 2 weeks later, I was going through a healing process, and I was healing from early stage cancer. So I was doing a lot of work on myself, and it's how I ended up doing what I do now. And it wasn't 2 weeks later that memory came again. But when it came again, I was in the right place to be with the right person who was able to help me process that really quickly. So it wasn't 12 years of therapy. It was, like you said, it was an immaculate, like, oh, shit. I'm just not even shiitaking this one. Oh, shit. I had managed to suppress that all my life. I was 38 years old. And if I thought about my childhood, I was like, it was just black. And I would hear people tell stories about the childhood, and I was like, how do they remember so much stuff? I don't remember all that. But it was completely, it's the power of our mind. I had completely suppressed it until I was in a safe space that it could be released, could come up, processed, and released quickly. So the memory then didn't impact the rest of my life. It actually freed me to live the rest of my life.
Yeah. Amazing.
And truly be who I am. So I think that's the really beautiful that container, and because of the amount of work the two of us have done together and individually, is this is also as much as it is about creating, as I mentioned before, and we've spoken about before, about losing stuff, losing stuff that doesn't serve us. And because that takes a lot of energy, that took a lot of energy to suppress those memories for 30 years.
Yeah.
And when that energy is not used to suppress, it can be used to create. But also, really importantly, actually, beautiful Kim Townsend just put this on her post last night about Brené Brown. We cannot suppress one emotion. We cannot suppress fear or shame or sadness or grief without suppressing joy and creativity. Yeah. So in being able to just quickly transform and release that, which is quantum, that's also the power of our work. is quantum physics means changing one state to another. So when we take that pain and transform it to light or a lighter energy or to love, then that energy can never be changed back again. It's like turning milk to butter. Once milk becomes butter, you can't turn it back to milk. Once you transform that pain into light or into joy or into love, and it's the love of self ultimately, then it can never be, you can't go back. It's a forever transformation. And I think that's what we're both very skilled at, is creating that quantum change. And I think quantum physics and quantum healing is thrown around a lot, but actually the true application of it is forever life transforming. And yeah, just one more thing. The ultimate transformation that happens is a relationship with yourself. And it's from that everything else is birthed or created.
And you just demonstrated the most brilliant example of that, and the deep impact that that had on you, and that you make through you. And you were called into that, right? You were called into that.
Yes.
That's just the most perfect illustration. And yeah, called into big magic, because even your healing process wasn't, the traditional. You totally followed your intuition. We don't need to talk about that, but just as an illustration of, you are, the theme of this retreat, deep impact called into big magic. Your life demonstrates that.
Totally. And let me just say, at that point in time, I knew nothing that I know now.
Yeah.
I come from running a restaurant and small nightclub, bar, hotel in Sydney, and doing property development. I didn't I didn't even know what a quantum was, or aura was, or I didn't know any of this stuff. However, we had done the one thing, we both did it at different times. It was the course in creating intention and follow our intention. And that is a game changer.
Yeah, totally.
I think if there's one thing, if you're listening to this and you're not coming to play with us, then really get clear on your intention. And I don't just mean big picture. I mean, when you wake up in the morning, what's your intention for the day? When you're going to a meeting, what's your intention for the meeting? When you're time with your kids, what's your intention with your time with your kids? Employing intention as, the compass to your life. That is the most life-changing thing you can do.
Oh, 100%, 100%. It's something that's aching for me to speak to now. And it was hearing your story. I also know your story that has brought me to this place now. So I actually want to speak to women now.
Yes.
Yeah, because then this is the piece that I'm really called to speak to. And it's the women who feel like there's nothing special about them. I want to speak to.
Yeah.
I want to speak. Yeah. I want to speak to you.
Yes. That's so in alignment with the conversation I've been having this week. Yes.
Oh, and same thing with me, because I know, your ego is that nothing's. We both have our versions of that, of not. There's nothing special about us, or there's nothing important about us, or comparison.
If you listen to me, what have I got to contribute?
Yeah, exactly. What have I got? Like, go and listen to that person over there, because they're so much better. And I know that goes on in some women's heads a lot.
Absolutely.
That they feel like there's nothing special about them, and that other people are more special and more capable. So therefore they just decide that they should abandon their visions. But if you have had callings, if your heart is pulled or has been pulled, and you have that belief that there's actually nothing really that special about you, so what's the point? You need to be here.
Exactly.
Because
I've been,
the truth is, right? Both you and I have had that story.
yes,
And thank God we're aware of that story. And we check ourselves when we buy into that for a moment, and we choose to no longer focus on that. And had we not done that, had we continued to buy into the story, the deep impact that you've had and that I've had wouldn't have happened.
exactly. And I know you and I, both of us. Jizzy, when I started doing this, I didn't intend to do this for a career. I would not have imagined that I work with the extraordinary people I work with doing the extraordinary things that they do. And I feel so privileged every day to work with the people I get to work with. And they probably don't think they're extraordinary either, but who they are and what they're contributing to on the planet is things that make and will make a deep impact to thousands of people's lives. And the effortlessness of that is that we have both found our own slipstream in the way that we activate that, support others to activate that. That's effortless for us in our creation, where I can live in Kenya or travel around the world, or, at the moment I'm sitting in Brussels, be wherever I want to be and still create big magic, that it can be effortless and beautiful, and you can create exactly the life you'd love to live in whichever form your magic is created. And that can be being the most beautiful parent. And I'm thinking of someone particular at the moment where she nurtures and loves her children beyond, and she cooks for her grandchildren every day and beautifully, and her nurturing is extraordinary, and the nurturing of her friends is so beautiful. But she doesn't value that, and she says, what am I leaving behind? And I'm like, wow, you don't see it. So for her, she doesn't have to do anything out of what she's currently doing, but actually learn to value that, see the value in the very thing she is doing, and own that. Because our children don't do what we do, what we say, they do what we do. So in she owning her value and demonstrating that with the loving food and the loving grace that she gives her family, that's invaluable, that's priceless.
And then there are some women who are to lead beyond their families.
Exactly.
Right. And, women, we love easily. I am generalizing here, but we love easily. It's the divine feminine. It's just part of our makeup. It's just who we are. So to love powerfully, now that's a different story. That's a different
And
story.
receive love powerfully.
Oh,
yeah. I want to throw that one in.
Yum.
To love powerfully and receive love powerfully, because there are so many women and men who give. They're brilliant at giving love, but not open to receiving love because that's vulnerable for some reason. And in that, you block your own flow of creativity, and you block the flow of those around you also. And I think that in talking about this, there is also the woman who has followed her husband around the world, traveling so he can have his career, and not found their own place within themselves to create from. Yeah. And have often used the excuse, oh, but I've given up everything for my husband. But in actually owning that that was your choice to follow that path and be the wife, or the mother, which is all perfect. And now you're at a new point where you have a choice to actually own your own brilliance and find your own creativity and express that rather than living in blame and regret. Like, that's super powerful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You hit the nail right on the head there. Yeah. Because that's all, blame and regret all comes from unworthiness, the unworthiness to claim your own joys, your own leadership, your own impact.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Michelle, you and I, we were completely in sync last night. You were messaging me and you were saying, as I'm chopping zucchinis, this idea is coming. And I said, well, as I'm peeling potatoes, this idea is coming. And you said to me that as you were chopping zucchinis, you had a piece of writing that came through you. So, and you read it to me and I absolutely adored it. So I'd love for you to share it here, please.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll just read it. I can't remember
Yes,
word
of
for
course. I'd
word,
love that. It was
but
perfect.
I was reflecting on the safari whilst, yes, chopping zucchini for the mung. And as you get to know me, you are going to receive the mung recipe, I'm sure. It's my 20-year favorite.
The mung beans.
The mung soup in my designer kitchen. As I said to you, I'm no Mother Teresa. I'm cooking mung in a designer kitchen. But what came through was activators who are ready to accelerate the momentum of the deep impact they are creating. This is who is being called. If you think you don't have the time to step away for a break, I'm here to say you don't have the time not to. The coherence created in 12 days will ignite creative acceleration and see your vision be activated in ways you never imagined. Or perhaps you have, but you can't yet see the how. So let me let you in on a little pearl of well-practiced wisdom. The secret source to creative acceleration is the coherence ignited when creating from your heart. I'm guessing you're successful because of the well-practiced and applied intelligence, intuition, structure, and strategy. But the fact is, your heart is 5,000 times more magnetic than your brain, as recorded by the Institute of Heart Math. Now imagine creating coherence between your immaculate business acumen, experienced, well-practiced strategy, and magnify that by 5,000%. Seriously, the only way is up, up, up. You're choosing to create big impact. And let's face it, the crazy of the world calls for all that are called to step up and create big magic. The time is now. It's not always about what you're creating. It's often about what you are letting go of, what you are willing to lose, so you can truly fly free.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I love that. It was very, very wise moment as you were chopping zucchinis. And there's a way that I'd like to complete this episode, and that is that there was a very special man called Rob Garsden who came to Kenya with us. I think I think it was the first time I came to Kenya, and Rob unfortunately passed away this year, only 40 years old. And I received an unexpected message from one of his friends that I didn't even know, who said Kenya was life-changing for him. He spoke about it so in such a sacred way. And Rob's parents have asked if I could give them details of Kipchanga Kids Home in Kenya, which is one of the places we'll visit, because they wanted, instead of flowers, they wanted donations to go to the kids' home. And when I spoke to Michelle, we were just absolutely blown away, because you never know. You never know how we will never know the deep impact that occurs post Kenya, never did we know that he spoke about Kenya the way that he did. Never did we know that he spoke about Kenya and the kids in the way that he did with his parents, such that his parents, to honor his passing, would ask for donations to be made to the home.
Yeah, we were both blown away and truly humbled. I felt so humbled in that moment that the journey that we had traveled had impacted him so greatly. As you said, we would never know that it impacted him so deeply, and that he talked about it so lovingly. And that's, I guess, there's what we know and there's what we don't know. He brought so much magic to that safari. I'm remembering the moment that everybody had gone off to see the hippos, and he was like, will you teach me how to do like EFT, the tapping technique? And he was doing it. Next minute, he's thrown back in his chair with his arms wide open, and he's a real left brainer, right? And he's going, oh my God, Michelle, I'm seeing color. I'm seeing color. There's all these colors in my brain. And I was like, wow, EFT's never had that effect on anything before. That's amazing. And it was just, I will never forget that moment. And the look, talk about awe and wonder. It wasn't from the elephants, it was seeing from light in his brain. And like, I was like, okay, we'll just go with it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And and it was it felt really significant to realize and humble that we had brought that, or the experience, and everyone on that experience had brought him so much joy.
Yeah. And I feel like he's here going, like dancing around. He's such a cheeky bugger.
Yeah, like come play. Yeah.
All right. I can't wait to share the experience with you in Kenya again. I can't wait to play. Just wish it was tomorrow.
Yes, it will come soon enough. I have to do a little tripping around the world before then, after being in lockdown for 3 years.
Yes. So thank you for being on this episode, Michelle, and sharing the magic of Kenya and us.
And us, exactly. Yeah. And if you've been called, just say yes.
Yeah, just say yes. Yeah. All right. And my final comment on this episode, which was so much fun to create with Michelle, is to let you know what to do if you would love to come to Kenya, or if you are interested and curious to check it out a little bit more and see if it's right for you. It's really easy. Email me at giselle@gisellegamby.com.au, giselle@gisellegamby.com.au. The spelling is in the show notes. And what I will do is I will reach out to you and we'll have a brief chat. And if we feel like we need to explore this even further, we're called to explore this even further, I will organize a 3-way with Michelle and myself and you'll get to experience Michelle and I and you in the magic of Kenya on our discovery call. So it's as easy as that. So send me an email and I will get in contact with you. Lots of love. Ciao, ciao. If you enjoyed this episode or previous episodes, I would so appreciate you sharing the love and letting your family, friends, and colleagues know about this podcast, because the only way that it's going to get out there is if we use word of mouth, the good old word of mouth. So I have my hands in appreciation for you, for those who have already been sharing the love. And should this part of the podcast inspire you to share amongst your network, I really appreciate you. Also, I've been saying that I am also returning to my first love, which is writing. So if you would like to receive me in your inbox every week, there is a link in the show notes where you'll be able to subscribe, and I look forward to writing to you. Have an incredible week. Thank you.